Welcome into the Sixers pregame show presented by Coors Light, and you visit CoorsLight.com/Sixers to get Coors Light delivered or find a store near you. Hello and welcome on this Sunday afternoon as the Philadelphia 76ers travel to Dallas for the second and final matchup of the season between these two teams, both with 34 wins on the season right now. So they're trying to position themselves for the playoffs. All of these games
feel that way. That
matter.
They have the same amount of wins. Just because, I feel like Luka's been getting pushed forward in this MVP conversation lately, and we're just sitting here like, man, the Sixers have been a mess for a lot of the. But hey, that's a long NBA season.
Yes, it is. That's Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Derek Bodner with the afternoon off. Brianna here producing. All of you in the chat, welcome as always. We have a lot to get to from the Tobias Harris conversation. See if he can follow up his Friday night performance, bring that to the Dallas Mavericks game this afternoon. Some injury report news that we have to discuss. Some other news that
Starting
Kyle gave us.
lineups are also now in, by the way.
Okay.
We can go right to that.
So we can get right to that. Kyle also has some stuff on what he had on Friday night. We talked about it after the fact, of course, once Kyle broke the news. And, of course, some best bets predictions later on. But who do we have for the starting lineup as we get things started?
So, drum roll, please,
Interesting. Okay.
Kyle Lowry, once again in the starting lineup. It's Buddy, Kyle, Tyrese, Tobias, and Mo Bamba.
Mo Bamba once again. So with the theory that Nick Nurse was talking about of why he started Mo Bamba, Derek Lively did not play in the first game earlier in February. Playing today, you talked about some stats that he had. We'll get to that in a bit. But why do you think he went with sticking with Mo Bamba to start, bring Paul Reed off the bench in this one?
I mean, it could be as simple as Paul Reed really responded to the benching, and maybe you just look at it and say Paul Reed in that 20 minutes, whatever it is, role that he's going to play off the bench is just more effective than he has been as a starter. We'll see. I mean, Nick the other day framed it as they were doing it to mess with the matchups and that Charlotte only had one true big they're going to play, and that's why you put Mo out there. I don't know how much I buy that. I know that Nick has been frustrated with Paul, at least to an extent. Like, I don't want to overblow it, but like all of us, he's seen the shot selection and has said, maybe reel it in a little bit, Paul. So I think that's part of it. I think also, look, like they have been up and down, up and down, up and down. You got to try different things. And so I don't think we're believers of Bamba as a general concept on the show.
Yep.
I actually would not be shocked, depending on the matchup, to see Batum essentially start as the small ball five. They've closed with that before. So it's something to look for moving forward. I think Lowry is the bigger deal because I think that is something that could stick for quite a while. This is with the bigs, they're going to go back and forth. Neither of those guys has been good enough to really hold on to a specific job. But Nick Nurse really believes in Lowry, and that was something that we talked about with him when they signed him coming out of the trade deadline and buyout season, I guess you would say, with him.
Could he be the starter?
And sure looks like it. Looks like he's at least going to get a chance.
Yeah, and as far as the bigs go, when you look at the game on Friday, as Kyle was talking about, with not having that many bigs in the lineup for the Sixers to have to worry about, so you start Mo Bamba. All right, it worked. The Mo Bamba, Paul Reed start, Paul Reed come off the bench. It worked.
Yeah.
It got the best out of Paul Reed. So you keep going with it maybe until it doesn't. But the other part where they may have had a very little amount of bigs, and this one, that's not the case. Derek Lively is active and available. They also traded for Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, who can go small ball five in that situation. So they have a legit three, and you also talk about Dwight Powell. So you have four bigs there in this case.
And all bringing different sort of stuff, too, to your point.
Right. So it's totally different from what Charlotte was bringing to the table.
They even use Maxey Kleber there as well.
Yes.
It's like now, obviously, with the added depth they've gotten, I think he's transitioned more to double big type lineups where he's not the lone guy on the floor. But we saw a lot of that the last time the Sixers played the Mavs.
Yeah, so that's one piece right there. So that's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But when you look at that, you have three different types. If, to Kyle's point, you see some Nick Batum at the five also, we'll see how that works out with whoever the combinations are at that time. But the Kyle Lowry piece, we talked about it on our trade deadline day on that Thursday where we mentioned it. Of course, Patrick Beverley being traded, campaign coming in, but the worst kept secret of Kyle Lowry signing with the Sixers. All right. Yeah, we talked about the faith that he has in Kyle Lowry, but it was also, hey, DeAnthony Melton's banged up at this time that this trade is going down. Buddy Hield comes in, okay, great. We saw how that worked out. But hey, small ball lineups, the combination of different types of players, if it works out, we saw the stability that Kyle Lowry brought to the floor, the leadership that he brought to the floor, the extra passes, the making sure the ball is kicked ahead, the fact that he was knocking down his open shots. He had 10 assists in that game, and it also gave Tyrese Maxey an opportunity to be an off-ball scorer at times too, where he didn't have to be the one running the point. And that brings a different dynamic of things there. So as you said, that is something to keep monitoring, because if they do pick up these wins like we said that they need, if he is playing well and Tyrese Maxey is looking like a point guard and then an off-ball scorer in that, there's some real value there to help out not only Tyrese Maxey, but this team. And you can see it all the time. You saw it best being in the arena. We saw some on television. He is pulling guys to the side as things are happening, dead ball situation, timeouts, free throws. Hey, this is what I saw. Make sure you do this, and that's real valuable.
Well, and, building off of our headline of the show and sort of what you and I wanted to get into, I think Lowry, if you have him out there on the floor as well as Tyrese, and Tyrese openly said a couple games back, part of Tobias' struggles are on me. Like, I have to set him up and look for him more, get him to his spots, whatever. Well, if you have two guards thinking like that in Maxey and Lowry, maybe Tobias is finally able to sustain a little bit of positive momentum, because I said it when I talked to you guys after the game, having talked to Tobias about where he's at mentally and what worked for him in that game. What was most impressive to me is that he was able to get his within the flow of the offense. Like, one of the problems has been, on top of he's just not shooting well prior to last game, Tobias was sticking out like a sore thumb in this offense. It was a lot of like, my turn, your turn to the rest of the team. Either he's getting it in the post and he's trying to back somebody down and attack somebody in isolation, or he wasn't really scoring or getting going. So to see him make some catch and shoot jumpers, make some quick decisions as a guy attacking closeouts, cutting off the ball. He had a nice one from Paul Reed toward the end of the game. Another one that Mo Bamba missed him on that he was very upset about. I was by the basket that we watch from as media, and he's like waving his hands, and so that he did not love that one. But just a lot more purpose as an off-ball player. And frankly, there were a few screams and yells from Kyle Lowry, like, ball's going to him, shoot the goddamn ball, Tobias. We love that attitude, because we preach that on the show all the time. I will take 2 for 8 if you get 8 shots up. Like, you cannot shy away, especially as one of the more talented scorers, shooters on the team. You got to let it go.
And the selfishness in that way is not really selfish.
No.
Because you have the ball is coming your way. You are the second best. You should be the second best scorer in this basketball team. You need to do that. And this was the argument that I made when Joel Embiid was there and Tobias was going through his struggles again. He and Tyrese Maxey were doing their thing, Joel Embiid, and Tobias was in that stretch of maybe 2-3 weeks where he wasn't doing that.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, be selfish. Call them off. Take the ball. It's a good shot because you have arguably the third best defender on you. And if you are as good as you think you are, you should be able to get a good look.
You can be selfishly unselfish.
Yes. You
Absolutely.
Can selfishly unselfish. And you know what? Like we said at the time, we can talk about that after the fact. I saw this. This is why I did it. It happens. And you have 48 minutes to do so. You have the advantage potentially in that moment. So yes, be selfish at times as long as it's not to the detriment of the team.
Yes.
I don't think anybody is going to have a problem with it where you're going to yell. Kyle Lowry is yelling at him for saying, no, take that shot, man. Take it. James Harden used to do the same exact thing because they would make the right pass to you and you give up a good look for a tougher look, like when we brought up the Buddy Hield shot against Boston where the clock is winding down and he has a hot potato and he has to take a fading out of bounds three-pointer. That cannot happen. So can he duplicate that type of performance? It may not be to the tune of 31 points. We're just simply talking volume and efficiency. Mentality in this one to make it easy on everyone else. So as you look at it and you see this matchup, they faced off on February 5th. And in that loss, 118-102, Tobias Harris shot 8 for 11 in 35 minutes for 17 points in that one. It was a tough one. They lost by 16. It was a tough game. How many threes
did he take in that game?
He took 1 3 and made it.
See, not going to cut it.
Right.
Not going to cut it.
Right.
And that's what I hammer with him because of what you're talking about, Devon. Like, they need him. This is not hey, Joel's available, Tyrese is available. Buddy's got it going, so you slide back into a complementary role. They need him to be a force for this team. And he said it after the game, and I'm really glad that he did. You know, some of the things that he focused on early, rebounding specifically, allowed him to build that early momentum and get into the flow of the game. And that's what we've been asking from Tobias Harris, is to say, all right, man, maybe the shot's not there. Maybe I am 2 for 7 like he was in Boston. But go get a rebound. Go push the ball on the break. Put some pressure on the defense. Suck attention in early offense. Kick it out to a teammate. I think he had like 4 assists against the Hornets as well, on top of the 30-plus points. He's not going to score 30 every game. That's not a reasonable expectation for any of us to have.
Nope.
Not even good numbers on efficient scoring. I still can't say that. But the mentality has to be there. The willingness to take open shots, the willingness to take on the challenge of being, a useful defensive player, frankly, because that's been as big of a gripe for us as anything recently. So I don't care if he doesn't score 30 today. I do care if he sustains, what should have been the lessons from that Charlotte game, the conversation that he had with Joel Embiid that we talked about some on this show the other day. If I see all that, let the chips fall. We'll see how it goes, but I'd be happy with that.
And to build off of it, you also have Buddy Hield, who was not available last time they played Dallas, but we have seen him now for 8 games in a Sixer uniform. Again, that's just somebody that's also going to help you out. So I like the way the starting lineup looked on defensively. That's a whole nother issue. But as we talk
that's
about
just the whole team right now.
And that's to be expected because they're just simply not a good one, mainly with no Melton, no Joel Embiid. That's just what it's going to look like. But when it comes to having another scorer like Buddy Hield out on the floor, again, it's going to open things up for Tobias Harris. He has to continue to have that type of mentality to keep this thing going, to keep Tyrese Maxey being able to have those looks, the opportunities for him, one-on-one situations. And if they are going to, like they did, he had his 33, but they threw those double teams at him. They threw those blitzes at him to get the basketball out of their hands. A lot of times, Tobias Harris was the recipient of a really good matchup and taking advantage of that ball swinging to him. He has to continue to do that this afternoon. Buddy Hield, just to kind of play off of that a little bit, when you look at a matchup like this against the Dallas Mavericks, Buddy Hield should be a pretty good one when you speak about the guards that they have, even with Tim Hardaway Jr. also being a somewhat okay defender, or just size-wise to be able to keep up with him, foot speed, etc. This is a game, again, where I'm looking squarely at Buddy Hield to try to get back to what we saw those first 5 games.
Yeah, and look, they have a lot of guys who, to be charitable, have lapses on defense, right? Like guys, same sort of issues we're talking about with the Sixers, where off-ball awareness can be a real problem. Like, I wouldn't say – the thing with Kyrie Irving is when he's engaged, I think he can be a very good defender at times.
Sure.
The problem is he doesn't want to get engaged all that often, particularly in the regular season. So he's susceptible. Luka has such a high usage offensively that he normally is taking it easy on the defensive end of the floor. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is, he comes and goes on that end as well. So they have a bunch of guys that if you're asking any of them to chase Buddy around screens, that's tough. Like, they're probably going to have – I would say they'll do a lot of off-ball switching and maybe try to counter it in that way. The other side of the floor is where I'm interested to see how this shakes out, right? Because who does Tyrese Maxey guard? Who does Lowry guard? Who does Buddy guard in that triumvirate? I guess there's probably a case that Maxey, maybe you just go mano a mano with Kyrie Irving. I think he's taken the challenge recently, defending other people. See how that turns out, certainly. Look, I don't have high expectations for the Sixers today, but this is a good proving ground for, okay, if the Lowry lineup is going to work, you're going to have to defend teams like this that have a couple of perimeter stars, and you don't have the perfect matchups to throw out there, but going to have to make it work somehow, some way.
And before we get to the injury report, the Celtics beat the Dallas Mavericks by 28 on Friday night.
And the Mavs are what, 1-3 in their last 4?
Yes.
So it's sputtering a little bit?
Yeah, and the starting lineup was Irving, Doncic, Josh Green, and then you had P.J. Washington and Derek Lively Jr. So with it, and you talk about that, yeah, what's the matchup? Who does Buddy Hield run on? Who does Kyle? Do you have Kyle Lowry more on Green to start to maybe slide him off because you know those switches are going to come?
Right.
You try to get certain matchups off to try to get the more favorable matchup, and that's the same thing for for Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey started against Jason Tatum in that game against Boston last Tuesday. So he did pretty decently against him as well in those matchups. So this is going to be interesting to see what they.
And by the way, did you hear his
do.
comments after the game that how he got better on defense was taking the Joel Embiid approach and just listening to what people say about him on Twitter,
looking at it and watching
mad.
it. Yes, yes, I saw that. Hey, if that's what works, go for it, man. Go for it. So run that out there. All right, injury-wise, when we look at the injury report here today, what do you have for the latest of who's in, who's out on this one?
Well, so importantly, KJ and Kelly Oubre are both in.
Good.
And
another center possibility.
So
KJ
possibly.
Martin. Yeah.
We'll see. The important piece of that Nick mentioned after the game on Friday was Kelly moving to the bench was planned coming in, and that was how they were going to try to configure things on Friday. So this will be our first look at, okay, Lowry in the starting lineup, and what does that do for Kelly in terms of freeing him up to hunt more shots, let's say, on the second unit. We know Kelly has no problem hunting shots at any given time. But Nick openly said, like, look, we think it'll be a better fit for him. We want to look at that.
What do you say? I'm mediumly
strongly considering Lowry as the starter.
Yes.
I'm mediumly strongly considering having one of these Coors Lights right now. And I was about to say, for our partner Coors Light, talk about having a chiller way and a chiller path. Like maybe Tyrese Maxey needs a chiller path than reading Twitter. I'm not going to recommend that he has a Coors Light before a game. I would recommend that to
after the game,
our people at home. But guys, with Coors Light, you're getting an ice cold beer. The mountains turn blue when they hit that perfect temperature. Pre-game for me, I could probably justify having a beer. We get into some spirited arguments on the show, especially with Derek. Him and I, you would admit to this, Devon. Him and I are like the grumpy old men of the show, I would say, as we're doing prep. And sometimes I just say, you know what, Derek, I'm tired of you. I'm going to hit the refrigerator, get me an ice cold.
Relax.
Coors Light, because Coors Light is a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish. It is mountain cold refreshment. So even if the state of Colorado is not happy with me for various reasons, even if Derek's not happy with me, I still can choose chill with a crisp and refreshing beer. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Golden, Colorado, what a great name for a place.
Golden, Colorado.
Golden. Is there anything similar to that? Like
Silver,
Colorado?
Silver, Colorado.
They have like little brother syndrome or something.
Is there one here? I mean, we have brotherly love, of course, for...
But that's a nickname. This is like a real place.
I know, so that's what I'm saying. Do we even have one here that I don't think...
Normally it's like Silver Lake
Philly,
or places like that.
Yeah.
Golden is pretty good.
All right. But look, good news. Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin. So that just helps out with the depth where it's just
might hurt Ricky's minutes.
Might hurt Ricky. But hey, when you're talking about also, hey, can Ricky go out there and throw some bodies at Tim Hardaway Jr. coming off the bench? Maybe even if Green has gone off, because remember with Green here in that matchup against them on February 5th, he had like 5 threes early on. Yeah. And who was covering him? Nobody. Clearly, because
I wouldn't expect Josh Green to hit 5 threes or whatever in this game.
No,
but he has been better.
Matching with the athleticism, that could be something. Throwing a body at Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic with a bigger body, very crafty. He can get Ricky Council in foul trouble. But that being said, maybe there's an opportunity for him there. If not, we know why. Just simply having more players back and also playing 5 minutes and having a rough one on Friday night. But good to have those guys back where it's not just a 9-man rotation because you only have 9 players available.
Yeah, and look, if we talked about Mo Bamba starting, if he struggles, now they have options, right? You could play Paul Reed some more if he's going well. Otherwise, you say, hey, KJ, we'll give you a crack there. Hey, Nick Batum, play some minutes there. So just being able to say to a bunch of different guys in different roles, whether it's center, power forward, whatever, all right, if you don't have it going, we'll try something different. We can go small. Like part of the value or part of the allure, I should say, of hiring Nurse in the first place is this guy's going to try some stuff. He's going to throw different lineups out on the floor. And that's been part of the shame of all these injuries that they've had. They've lost a lot of their flexibility in that ability for Nurse to say, all right, I'm going to put 4 or 5 athletes on the floor, spread it out, and switch everything. You can't really do that with a 2/3 of your lineup available type of game. So excited for that to the extent you can be excited about a game. Not to spoil anything, I think they're probably going to lose. So they're definitely underdogs in, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, the other one I saw in the injury report was of note is campaign illness out for this one. So again, if he's not getting those other minutes, maybe Ricky does. Certainly Kelly Oubre, maybe his minutes extend a little bit more just because of that. But good to have Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Maxey, and others who can handle the basketball in the event with campaign out that you might have to go in another direction.
Yeah, and I would say the Melton absence is one that we talk about quite a bit because he's been out for so long this season. This is a matchup where I think you really feel that because as we're talking about defensive matchups and how you line it up, he's somebody that can switch across multiple matchups in this game. I'd say a decent option, not a great option against Kyrie Irving. So to not have him hurts. He's also at minimum missing their next game in Brooklyn with your boy.
Had 38 yesterday. Happy day.
I did see the tweet that he's been killing the Hawks this season. So
averaging like 30 against them.
I can't say I've watched many Hawks-Nets games this season.
I've done enough for everybody else. That's all right.
Yeah, take one for the team on that one. So
yeah. Liam Stevens says it's slightly early to be cracking the Coors Light. Liam,
sir, it's
1 o'clock,
afternoon.
man. It's almost 1 o'clock. You can get ready for that. Sit back, watch the Sixers. Crack open your Coors Light on a Sunday afternoon.
I'll also give you one.
Beautiful day.
This is from my old Irish grandfather who just passed last year. He was a Navy guy, and then later in life just like loved boats. So his rule was always maritime rules, which is basically you drink anytime you want. And then the other one that he would say, and I actually found out pretty recently, we were not as Irish on that side as we thought. It was more of a mix there, but he used to say it's past noon in Dublin. That was his other one.
That's the rule, man.
Liam, it is past noon here, let alone in Dublin. And
so have at it.
And by maritime rules, you are overdue for Coors Light.
So have at it, man. Have at it. All right. We talked about the guard matchups at least. Are there any other key matchups that stand out to you in this one? Maybe the bigs, something there with Tobias Harris, maybe just off the bench with Oubre matching Tim Hardaway's offensive production off the bench, should that be something that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up Tobias again, and I know that we've really been hammering him, but I do think this is a team that he can have a good game against, right? Like they're not super big in the front court, or at least like most of their guys they're playing are. So Maxey Kleber is a good example. Maxey is a good 4-5 hybrid type because he can shoot and he can defend a little bit. But that's somebody that Tobias should be able to go by if he's playing him once he comes in off of the bench. PJ Washington, I think, is somebody he's slightly bigger than. You should be able to take him down to the weight room. And then if you use like the Josh Greens, that's another size advantage for Tobias. So I do think there are guys for him to attack. And if they can engineer some switches, like you get Tobias against Kyrie, you get Tobias against Tim Hardaway Jr., guys like that. I feel confident about him.
That's the name of the game.
In those type of matchups.
Find the cross match.
So this might be one where it's more of, hey, instead of get it in the flow of the offense, like we designed some stuff as Nick Nurse and the coaching staff to get him going and to get him those matchups, maybe some brush screens, go screens from Buddy to generate quick switches. We'll see. But yeah, I do think, better opponent, higher bar to clear against Dallas, but I do think this is a matchup that Tobias can do some damage if he comes in with the right mentality, and they actually designed some looks for him early in this game.
Yeah, and when you look at that opportunity, we can't have a situation where as athletic as Josh Green is, he's smaller than Tobias Harris. So when he gets him on the block, if that is a matchup, he has to be aggressive and go for it. Sure, he can leap and maybe attempt to force a tough shot for Tobias Harris, but in terms of having that length and having that height advantage, he cannot shy away from that situation. Even with Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is not a good defender. If he wants to, sometimes he's very smart with his gambles and getting to his spots. But for the most part, when it comes to any of those players that they can find that cross match on, he has to take advantage of that situation. So I look at that one. And then I just look at the bigs and seeing where Derek Lively is very active on the glass. You saw that very early. They try to find him in lob situations on the offensive end. Very good offensive rebounding, attacking that situation. So with it, this is where Mo Bamba, Paul Reed, maybe a combination of them with Batum and KJ
anytime
Martin.
we're relying on Mo Bamba to get rebounds,
I know, but he showed us something a little bit on Friday. Do that again here against these guys, because there's some athletic bigs that they have. You have to make sure you match that intensity, that effort, that want to get those rebounds.
Hit
and not
somebody
allow
on
them,
the way by. No free lanes.
Put your body on
basket.
them. You know, a little forearm, occasionally picking up a cheap foul that way is not a bad thing, because you're letting them know it's not going to be sweet here. It's not going to be sweet. It's not. You got to get those rebounds. So with it, I'm looking at the bigs in that way to make sure that however many bigs that they have as a 5, whether it's Bamba, Reed, Martin, or Batum, they have to make sure that they do what they did against Cleveland, where you win that matchup again on the glass, despite seeming like a disadvantage. So you have to make sure that they do that. All right, let's get to some of the best bets here, because I'm just going right away, because Tobias Harris was the one on points, Tuesday, right? And I have it here. It closed on me quickly, but I'll jump right back in here. Right now, I'm going to start with Tobias Harris, over under of 19.5.
Oh,
we went 16.5 on Tuesday against Boston, failure, and it is setting him up for failure. He had 17 against them on February 5th back here in Philadelphia. They lost that one by 16. He was efficient, 7 for 11, but it wasn't good enough because he only took 1 3-pointer. So
19.5.
19.5.
I'm hitting the under. I'm sorry, Tobias. I hope you prove me wrong on that one. But
so with it, I'm going to switch it and pivot to the threes, over under 1.5 made 3-pointers for Tobias Harris today. Made threes.
I'm also going under.
1.5 going under.
Going under. Even if he has a good game, I don't suspect it's going to be another. Like, the volume for him has been there recently, right? He took 7 against Boston, and that was 2 for 7. So that was great to see him continue to shoot. I don't suspect that's going to happen in this one if he doesn't have it going early. He was 5 for 8 from 3 against Charlotte. Yeah. So if we're just looking at the trends, he made 5 against Charlotte, 2 against Boston, and then 0, 1, 1, 0 the 4 games prior to that.
Okay.
So
all right.
I'd say under on both those. But
all right. I give you one more, this time on the Dallas side, plus 205 for Luka Doncic, triple-double against the 76ers this afternoon. Plus 205. That seems
I'm not taking it. But
that seems like a pretty good bet. I didn't Celtics against the Mavs. He had 37, 11, and 12. Well, 12 rebounds, 11 assists. So Luka Doncic, plus 205.
I'm not worried about the points. So don't put it
Not at all. Not at all. It's the rebounds and those assists there. So I would go with the plus 205, and I would put something on that one for that one. All right, predictions. All right. You already said it's a tough one for them today. We have about a minute to go. Predictions in this one. What do you have?
I'll take the Mavs. Mavs by, call it 12, and it'll be a deceptive 12. I think Dallas will kind of, stay out in front most of the second half and coast into a victory in the end. All
right. I think I'm with you. I'm going with the 10-point win for the Dallas Mavericks. They sweep the season series. They get the W, and we'll see what we're talking about after the game. We thank everybody for hanging out with us on this Sunday afternoon. Beautiful day here in Philadelphia. Big matchup for both teams as they try to really position themselves to keep getting W's as they
Sixers need a good win.
Themselves.
Good win would really help.
Had a good one against Cleveland. Need a good one here against Dallas as well. We thank our sponsor for the show, the great people from Coors Light.
Absolutely.
The PHLY Sixers pregame show sponsor. We'll be back after the game to talk about hopefully a win, making us both look silly as we predict losses. Hopefully we're talking about a win for Kyle, Brianna, I'm Devon. Thanks for everybody tuning in. We'll talk to you after the game. So come on back. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Ash said it.
Enjoy some good weather before the post-game show.
Take your phone and watch the game outside and make sure you get a Coors Light. We'll be back after the game.
We all silly like the mayor.